Right now, people everywhere are quietly terrified of becoming completely obsolete. And honestly, looking at the headlines, it's kind of hard to blame them. We are living through this unprecedented explosion of generative AI tools that can write college-level essays, paint breathtaking portraits, and even compose full symphonies in literally a matter of seconds. It feels like magic, but it also feels a little threatening. Welcome to This Explainer, where we are going to dive deep into a fascinating philosophical mystery. We're going to figure out if these machines are actually creating anything at all, or if they're simply holding up a highly complex digital mirror to our own humanity. Let's dive in. It is arguably the defining question of our modern era. Can a machine truly be creative? If you pose this to a computer scientist, a philosopher, and an artist, you're going to get three wildly different answers. So we're basically setting up a detective story here, trying to find the exact line between genuine human ingenuity and mere mechanical mimicry. Look, there's no denying that AI is rapidly improving at abilities we once thought were exclusively ours. It's passing the bar exam, it's writing legal briefs, it's generating award-winning photography. But as we unpack this, we really have to recognize a massive fundamental gulf between two concepts: intelligence and meaning. Intelligence is just about processing information to solve a puzzle. Meaning, on the other hand, is about understanding why that puzzle actually matters in the first place. Humans naturally seek purpose. Machines, they just execute tasks.
To figure out where we're headed, we first have to ground ourselves in what we're actually dealing with today. Broadly speaking, generative AI is the use of computer systems to emulate human-like creative processes, which allows for the generation of artistic and design outputs. Think about it. When you type a prompt into a tool like Midjourney or ChatGPT, it's quickly scanning vast, unimaginable oceans of human data, identifying complex patterns, and then just predicting what sequence of pixels or words should logically come next to satisfy your request. It is an absolutely brilliant emulation of human output. But, and this is crucial, emulating the output is not the same thing as experiencing the process. A machine executes its task with flawless mathematical precision, but human creation is driven by a messy, beautiful search for purpose.
Decades ago, long before ChatGPT, early AI pioneers Newell, Shaw, and Simon developed a strict four-pronged criteria to measure true creativity. They said a genuinely creative solution has to be novel and useful, it demands we reject previously accepted ideas, it must result from intense motivation and persistence, and finally it has to come from clarifying a problem that was originally vague. Now I want you to look really closely at that third point: intense motivation and persistence. This is exactly where the cracks in machine creativity start to show. Think about parents raising children. The late nights, the incredible sacrifices they make for their loved ones. That is driven by intense, undeniable motivation. Or think of an artist starving in an apartment, driven by this burning desire to express a personal truth. A machine doesn't have that. It simply runs its calculations until a line of code tells it to stop.
The philosopher Margaret Bowden offers a brilliant distinction that really helps us categorize what we are actually seeing from AI. She divides creativity into two distinct types. First, you have P-creativity, or psychological creativity. This is when an idea is entirely new to the specific person who came up with it, even if someone else in the world has thought of it before. Think of a child discovering for the very first time how to mix blue and yellow paint to make green. To them, it's a revelation. Then there's H-creativity, or historical creativity. This is a concept that has never existed in all of human history, like Einstein dropping the theory of relativity. Now, AI systems are phenomenal at P-creativity. They generate novel combinations all day long. And yes, sometimes they even stumble into H-creativity, like finding a new chemical compound. But they do it completely blindly. There is zero self-awareness, zero values, and absolutely no personal identity attached to the discovery. We kind of act like AI just dropped out of the sky yesterday, right? But the evolution of machine creativity has incredibly deep roots. Back in the late 1800s, we were already seeing simple combinatorial models attempting to generate music. Fast forward to the 1970s, and researchers were building rule-based symbolic storytelling programs with names like Tailspin. The 90s brought us adaptive cognitive rules with systems like Minstrel, and then, boom, in 2014, the whole landscape shifted dramatically with the introduction of generative adversarial networks, or GANs. Walking through this timeline is super important because it shows how we moved from very clunky mechanical models to modern deep learning. The computing power absolutely exploded, sure, but the fundamental nature of the machine, it stayed exactly the same. It is still just executing instructions, entirely devoid of the human experience.
To really grasp why today's AI feels so impossibly, almost spookily human, we have to unpack the actual mechanics underneath the hood. Generative adversarial networks essentially consist of two neural networks locked in a constant digital battle. You have a generator trying to create content, let's say a totally fake photograph of a human face, and on the other side, you have a discriminator evaluating that image against real photographs, actively trying to spot the fake. They compete endlessly to improve. The generator learns to make its fakes more realistic, and the discriminator learns to be a better detective. It is an incredibly clever algorithmic dance. But pay attention to the words we're using here: evaluating, competing, generating. These are cold, mechanical processes. The AI is solving an incredibly complex math problem, but it has absolutely no idea what a human face actually represents or the deep emotions that a face might convey. It's solving the problem without understanding why the problem matters.
This brilliantly illustrates another one of Margaret Bowden's frameworks. She contrasts exploratory creativity with transformational creativity. Exploratory creativity is basically exploring within an already established conceptual space. And let's be honest, AI is the ultimate explorer here. It can map out literally every possible variation of a pop song or a landscape painting in minutes. But transformational creativity, that means transcending or totally breaking the rules of the space entirely. This is so much harder. Why? Because transformational creativity requires wisdom, and wisdom is vastly different from knowledge. Knowledge is knowing the strict rules of painting. Wisdom is knowing that breaking those rules, the way Picasso did with Cubism, might perfectly capture the fragmented anxiety of an entire generation, or how Beethoven shattered classical symphony structures to express this profound, raw emotion. An AI cannot purposefully transform a space because it doesn't have the lived experiences or values required to guide that transformation.
We can understand this limitation even better by looking at how decisions are actually made. Let's contrast algorithms with heuristics. Algorithms are rigid. They are exact mechanical plans specifying the desired outcome and the precise step-by-step path to get there. It's like a GPS. Heuristics, on the other hand, are flexible rules of thumb that actively require human judgment. Genuine creativity requires the total freedom to deviate from a strict pre-programmed path. When a human artist works, they aren't just blindly executing an algorithm. They rely on heuristics shaped by their personal identity, their past traumas, their greatest joys, and their self-awareness. They make massive leaps of faith. They'll pause and say, this doesn't logically make any sense, but it just feels right. A machine cannot feel right. It can only calculate what is statistically most probable based on its training data.
Let's try a quick thought experiment, because it reveals a massive philosophical roadblock. Imagine a snowboarder carving their way down a mountain through fresh, deep powder. Unbeknownst to them, the tracks they accidentally leave behind form a perfectly pleasing, incredibly beautiful geometric pattern when viewed from a helicopter above. Just picture that sweeping, elegant curve in the bright white snow. Visually, it is absolutely stunning. But is it creative? Well, philosophers would argue no. Accidental beauty without intentional design is not true creativity. That snowboarder was just trying to get to the bottom of the hill. They had zero intention of making art. When an AI generates a beautiful, moving poem, it is very much like those snowboard tracks. The result is gorgeous, and we as observers get immense value out of it. But the machine had absolutely no intention of moving you to tears. It was merely executing a mathematical descent down a giant mountain of data.
And this brings us directly to what's called the agency problem. Natural phenomena like intricate snowflakes or a breathtakingly brilliant sunset are undeniably beautiful, but we don't call them creative. Why is that? Because creativity inherently requires an intentional agent. AI produces novelty, sure, but it completely lacks intrinsic motivation. Think again about the profound sacrifices people make for their loved ones. A parent going without sleep to care for a sick child. They do this not because they are programmed by some cold algorithm, but out of a deep, intrinsic motivation rooted in love, purpose, and responsibility. When humans create art or build businesses or write books, it is an extension of this exact same intentional agency. We create because we are driven by meaning. An AI has no desires, it has no fears, and it makes no sacrifices. It simply lacks the beating heart of agency.
The philosopher John Searle framed this whole debate perfectly by distinguishing between weak and strong artificial intelligence, and we can easily apply his framework to creativity as well. Weak artificial creativity is basically a system behaving as if it is creative. Strong artificial creativity means genuinely being creative. Right now, today, we have absolutely mastered weak artificial creativity. Computers are churning out things that, if a human had made them, we would instantly label as pure genius. But we have to ask, is the AI actually creating, or is it merely simulating the outward appearance of human genius?
Think of it this way. If you build a robotic bird that flaps its metal wings and flies around the room, it is simulating flight. But if you build a computer program that simulates a massive thunderstorm, nobody gets wet, right? The simulation of a creative act is not the actual lived experience of a creative act.
Now, you might think this anxiety about machines replacing us is brand new, but actually, we can look back centuries to find the root of this exact skepticism. Ada Lovelace, who is widely considered to be the very first computer programmer, wrote this way back in 1843 regarding an early mechanical computer. She said, "The analytical engine has no pretensions whatever to originate anything." She argued that a machine can only ever do exactly what it has been explicitly programmed to do. Now, while modern machine learning is obviously vastly more complex than the brass gears and levers Lovelace was looking at, her fundamental objection still haunts the entire field of AI. Even future AGI, artificial general intelligence, might hit this exact same wall. An AGI could possess unimaginable processing power, it could solve our greatest scientific riddles, but could it ever possess genuine purpose? Can it originate a truly unique thought that isn't just a statistical recombination of past human history?
The modern philosopher John Haugeland captured this limitation perfectly with a very blunt observation. He noted that machines operate without giving a damn. It's a stark critique, but it's incredibly accurate. Machines may output incredibly valuable things for us, but they completely lack the capacity to care about or be motivated by their own creations. AI systems are phenomenal at solving problems, but they do it without understanding why those problems matter to humanity in the first place. Think about the greatest leaders throughout history. Think about moments of unimaginable courage or deep, profound compassion. A civil rights leader risking their life for equality. A scientist working tirelessly for decades to cure a disease. These actions matter precisely because we have a massive stake in the outcome. A machine cannot give a damn because it operates totally outside the human condition. It exists in a sterile vacuum of meaning, completely untouched by the beautiful, difficult realities of human life.
And so, we arrive at our final provocative thought. Is the ultimate gap in artificial intelligence not a lack of processing power, but the human capacity to care? As we move deeper and deeper into an AI-powered world, people naturally wonder what skills and qualities are going to become more valuable. The answer isn't faster coding or better rote memorization. The abilities AI can never replace are the ones deeply rooted in our unique human existence: empathy, moral judgment, self-awareness, and the wisdom to know what is actually worth creating in the first place. An AI can generate a million flawless variations of a painting in a minute, but only a human being can look at one of them and say, "This matters to me." Only a human can infuse a creation with genuine lived purpose. True creativity is, at its core, an act of caring, and that might just remain an exclusively human virtue forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.